بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Let's move forward to Hadith number 48, which is in this version of Subul As-Salam under the chapter heading كيف يتمضمض ويستنثر. How is a Muslim, how is someone who's performing wudu to make that which is called al-madmada wal-istinthar or al-istinshaq. Okay, the madmada meaning putting the water in your mouth, as we've explained before, swishing the water around, and then putting it in your nose and expelling it from your nose or your nostrils. Khairan inshaAllah ta'ala. Okay. So hadith number 48 states, وعن علي رضي الله عنه في صفة الوضوء ثم تمضمض واستنثر ثلاثا. يمضمض ويستنثر من الكف الذي يأخذ منه الماء. أخرجه أبو داود والنسائي. وعن عبد الله بن زيد في صفة الوضوء ثم أدخل صلى الله عليه وسلم يده فمضمض واستنشق من كف واحد يفعل ذلك ثلاثا متفق عليه. So the first narration is the narration of Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu ardah, concerning the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam's wudu. It says أخرجه أبو داود بإسناد ضعيف. Okay, or afwan, أخرجه أبو داود والنسائي. So Ali radiallahu anhu's narration is concerning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's wudu, meaning this is a clip from a bigger hadith, from a larger hadith, a solid hadith, one larger piece, and so this is a smaller slice or chunk from that concerning the Prophet ﷺ's wudu. And the highlighting point here, ثُمَّ تَمَضْمَضَ, and then the Prophet ﷺ, he put the water in his mouth and he began to swish the water around his mouth. Okay, and expel that water, spit that water out. وَاسْتَنْثَرَ ثَلَاثًا. Okay, يُمَضْمِضُ وَيَنْثِرُ مِنَ الْكَفِّ الَّذِي يَأْخُذُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءَ, and he would do it with the hand with which he had the water. يَأْخُذُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءَ مِنَ الْكَفِّ الَّذِي يَأْخُذُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءَ. So putting the water in, putting it out. And this hadith is collected by Imam Abu Dawud and collected by Imam An-Nasa'i. Next narration is Abdullah bin Zayd radiallahu anhu concerning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's wudu as well. This is a selection from a larger hadith. ثُمَّ أَدْخَلَ صلى الله عليه وسلم يده, and then the Prophet he put his hand, okay, in the pot or the bowl or the cauldron where the water was. فَمَضْمَضَ وَاسْتَنْشَقَ مِنْ كَفٍ وَاحِدَةٍ, and he put the water in his mouth and his nose from one hand. يَفْعَلُ ذَلِكَ ثَلَاثًا, doing this three times. And that hadith is in Sahih Bukhari and in Sahih Muslim. It's agreed upon by the two sheikhs. As-San'ani rahimahullah ta'ala, he says regarding these hadiths, فَمَضْمَضَ وَاسْتَنْشَقَ وَلَمْ يَذْكُرِ الْإِسْتِنْثَارِ لِأَنَّ الْمُرَادَ إِنَّمَا هُوَ ذِكْرُ اكْتِفَائِهِ بِكَفٍ واحدة من الماء لما يدخل في الفم والأنف وأما دفع الماء فليس من مقصود الحديث. Okay, so what's mentioned here is putting the water in the mouth and the nose with one handful. That's what's meant here. Taking the water out, putting the water out with the other hand, the left hand, etc. That's not what's meant here. Okay, khairan inshallah. So one hand, and not having a handful for the mouth and a handful for the nose. All right. يفعل ذلك ثلاثا. Abdullah bin Zayd radiallahu anhu's narration says he did this three times. هو ظاهر في أنه كفاه كف واحد أو للثلاث المرات، وإن كان يحتمل أنه أراد به فعل كل منهما من كف واحد ويغترف في كل واحدة من الثلاث. والحديث كالأول من أدلة الجمع وهذا الحديث الأول مقتطعان من الحديثين الطويلين في صفة الوضوء وقد تقدم مثل هذا إلا أن المصنف إنما يقتصر على موضع الحجة الذي يريده كالجمع هنا. So, do you use it doing this 3 times, 3 separate handfuls, 1 handful for the mouth, 1 handful for the nose, or just 1 handful for both the hands and the nose? We've explained for the mouth and the nose, excuse me. That's been explained already. The scholars who say 1 handful for both. Scholars who say every handful should be separate. And the scholars who say that it's optional and both are applicable. Khairan inshallah. Hadith number 50, under the chapter heading or the bracket, not necessarily from the author. ضرورة وصول الماء إلى أعضاء الوضوء. The necessity of having the water reach all parts of your body when making wudu. When you make wudu, the water has to reach and has to touch every place that it's supposed to. And no place, no spot is to be left off or left alone or neglected or abandoned. Hadith number 50. وعن أنس رضي الله عنه قال رأى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رجلا وفي قدمه مثل الظفر لم يصبه الماء فقال ارجع فأحسن وضوءك. أخرجه أبو داود وابن ماجه والنسائي. Narrated Anas radiallahu anhu. One day the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam saw a man making wudu, and on his foot, on one of his feet, one of his 2 feet, he saw a dry spot. مثل الظفر. And this dry spot was like a nail, a toenail, the size of a toenail. لم يصبه الماء. It was dry. So the Prophet ﷺ, he told the man, irji'. He said, go back. فَأَحْسِنْ وُضُوءَكَ. And perfect your wudu. Go back and make your wudu again the proper way. This hadith is collected by Imam Abu Dawood, Imam Ibn Majah, and Imam Ibn An-Nasai, the people of the Sunan, except for Tirmidhi. There are other versions of this hadith. وقد أخرج مثله مسلم من حديث جابر عن عمر إلا أنه قيل إنه موقوف على عمر. وقد أخرج أبو داود من طريق خالد بن معدان عن بعض أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم رأى رجلا يصلي وفي ظهر قدمه لمعة قدر الدرهم لم يصبها الماء فأمره النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يعيد الوضوء والصلاة. قال أحمد بن حنبل لما سئل عن إسناده جيد قال نعم. طيب. So there's another version of this hadith collected by Imam Muslim. Narrated from Jabir, from Umar radiallahu ta'ala an al-Jami'. But that version of Sahih Muslim is said that it's just from Umar's statement. There's another hadith collected by Abu Dawood from Khalid bin Ma'dan, who narrated from some of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, that one day the Prophet ﷺ saw a man offering salah, and in his foot, upon his foot, one of his feet, his heel, whatever the case may be, there was a dry spot the size of a coin. It was dry. It wasn't touched by water. So the Prophet ﷺ commanded him to make his wudu again and to make his salah again. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala was asked about this hadith. Is this chain of narration strong? Is it good? Imam Ahmad said yes. Sanani says regarding the fiqh of these hadiths, وهو دليل على وجوب استيعاب أعضاء الوضوء بالماء نصا في الرجل وقياسا في غيرها. He says this is a clear proof, this is a dalil, this is an evidence that one has to cover all of his body parts. Well, the body parts that you must wash in wudu, not your entire body, hands, arms, feet, etc., they have to be covered by water. It cannot be any dry spots. And this is clear text. This is a dalil specifically speaking on the foot or the feet, and the other parts are included through analogy, through qiyas. They take the same ruling as the body part that has been specifically mentioned. طيب. So therefore, once more, the feet must be washed with no dry spots, and any other part of your body that you're commanded to make wudu upon must be washed without any dry spots. وقد ثبت حديث ويل للأعقاب من النار قاله صلى الله عليه وسلم في جماعة لم يمس أعقابهم الماء. Another narration is the narration in which the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, woe to people's heels from the fire of hell. He said this alayhi salatu wasalam to a group of Muslims who were offering wudu, and their heels were left dry. And the hadith obviously is in Bukhari and in Muslim. وَإِلَى هَذَا ذَهَبَ الْجُمْهُورِ. And this view that all parts of wudu must be washed thoroughly, completely, was adopted by the majority of the people of knowledge. Jumhur al-ulama, overwhelming majority of the scholars, the majority of the scholars. وروي عن أبي حنيفة أنه قال إنه يعفى عن نصف العضو أو ربعه أو أقل من الدرهم وروايات حكيت عنه. As far as Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, then he held the view, or it is said, hukiyat, it's been mentioned from him, people have quoted him that he said, is that half of the bone or the organ or the limb, or fourth, or a smaller part than that, dirham, a silver coin, what we say a quarter or a nickel, something like this. If it's dry, then it's okay. The different versions, things that have been mentioned that he's quoted to have said with regards to small specks or spots being pardoned and excused. And obviously half of the foot, half of the arm is a big deal. So did Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala actually say that? Is that authentically traced back to him? Sanani says hukiyat, it's been mentioned. But is it authentically proven Abu Hanifa would say that half of the arm doesn't have to be washed? Yu'fa is pardoned? That's very far-fetched. As far as a coin, that's a huge difference. A coin the size of a dime, the size of a nickel, all right, isn't the same as half of my arm is still dry, and that's okay. خير إن شاء الله. وقد استدل بالحديث أيضا على وجوب الموالاة حيث أمره أن يعيد الوضوء ولم يقتصر على أمره بغسل ما تركه. Some scholars also use this hadith to prove that wudu must be made in proper succession. Wudu has to be made in proper succession. Al-muwala. You cannot wash your face and then come back 10 minutes later and wash your arms, and then walk away, have a phone call, text someone, and come back and then wash your head, wipe your head. La. The face, the fingertips to the elbows, okay, the head and the feet, they have to be washed, wiped, they have to be done back to back in one quick movement, one swift movement. All right, unless there is an excuse, something that is beyond their control, such as it being extremely cold or extremely hot. Your body becomes dry, your hand, your arm, whatever, becomes really dry really quick, or something like that, something out of your control. And if that's not the case, you cannot make wudu with 5-minute, 10-minute, 3-minute intervals. As far as if you ran to pick up the phone really quick and your elbow is still wet, your arm is still wet, and you're on the right hand, and then you move to the left, that's a different story. Something very quick. Now, you had to take off your shoes or to wipe off your socks or to wash your feet. That's one thing. The body parts, they're still wet. It's only a couple of seconds, a minute at most, All right, but you can't go to the door, answer the delivery man, get the pizza, sit down, eat the pizza, go in the refrigerator, start drinking some a Pepsi, and then finish your wudu. La. All right, and that is called al-muwalat. Al-muwalat. So he says that this hadith is also used as a proof for the obligation of al-muwalat, that muwalat must be done. Whereas the Prophet ﷺ, he commanded the man to make the wudu again and to also make the salah again. All right? And he didn't just say, just go and wash what you left off. But he says, yu'id al-wudu, to make the wudu again from scratch. Right? Whereas the man finished his wudu, obviously it was incomplete. He started making salat. And the Prophet says, go back. You have to start the wudu from the beginning. You can't just, it's just the left foot, so just wash the left foot or wash the small part of the left foot. La. Understand how the hadith is being used? قيل ولا دليل فيه لأنه أراد التشديد عليه في الإنكار. And other scholars, they counter this, whether they believe that muwalat is obligatory or not. But they say this hadith, and once again, precision. Being precise as a student of knowledge, as a scholar, and not being sloppy. Also, we learn from this style how to bring up an argument, how to counter that argument, how to defend the argument when it's being countered, right? Like a boxing match. You throw a punch, boom, pat, pat, boom, boom, boom. 3-4 punches go by. You duck, you parry, right? You push off, you use your shoulder, right? You hit back. And 3 or 4 punches in succession are exchanged between the two boxers. So you have to learn how to throw the punch, how to duck, how to counter his counter, how to move from his move. Understand? That's how you become strong in learning Islam and learning fiqh. This is the proof for this. Other scholars say that. Even if you don't agree, but you know the argument that they're going to use. And you're prepared to counter their counter and to recounter their recounter. Understand? Khairan, inshallah. And obviously that's a high level of studies, okay, in which a person has to spend years out of his life, countless hours devoting himself to studying, to memorizing, to learning, to sitting with the scholars of Islam, to graduating from university, from learning things systematically, from spending many long hours in the library by himself. Okay? Tayyib. So therefore, other scholars, they say there's no proof in this hadith for that. Rather, the Prophet only intended tashdeed, all right, to be harsh on him and criticizing him and shunning the people away from being lazy and sloppy and lethargic concerning their wudu. And not that he had to make everything over from scratch. وَالْإِشَارَةَ إِلَى أَنَّ مَنْ تَرَكَ شَيْئًا فَكَأَنَّهُ تَرَكَ الْكُلَّ وَلَا يَخْفَى ضَعْفُهُ. He then says, is that the Prophet ﷺ only intended to rebuke him harshly and to show him that when a person leaves off a part, as if he left off everything. Sanani says that's clearly weak. فالأحسن أن يقال إن قول الراوي أمره أن يعيد الوضوء أي غسل ما تركه وسماه إعادة باعتبار ظن المتوضي فإنه صلى ظانا بأنه قد توضأ وضوءا مجزئا وسماه وضوءا في قوله يعيد الوضوء لأنه وضوء لغة. وفي الحديث دليل على أن الجاهل والناسي حكمهما في الترك حكم العامد. Okay. And he goes on to explain how the counter argument to the counter argument to the counter argument. And obviously, as we have said, the scholars, they differ on this issue. What is the ruling on al-muwalat? And of course, the scholars say that the muwalat is obligatory in wudu. They have other proofs and evidences too. This isn't the only proof. But this is showing you the precepts of al-ijtihad. How you start off with this principle, this is a hadith along with another, and you deal with the proofs and evidences individually. And then at the end, you deal with them collectively. But you don't use one hadith and interpret one hadith, interpret one verse with a pre-assumption that this is the correct view just because of other. No, we are dissecting the proofs and evidences. It's like a courtroom. This one evidence, this one proof has to be thoroughly investigated by itself, regardless of the other articles of evidence. So here we have a glove from the murder scene. We don't, just quickly run through it because we have a knife and we have blood, we have DNA. No, we want to take this one piece of evidence and look at it as if it's the only piece of evidence. We want to thoroughly study and dissect and cut up and split up every single square centimeter of this glove and investigate everything pertaining to the glove as if it's the only proof that we have. And the good lawyer, of course, he's going to cover his ground. He's going to cover his tracks. He's going to be looking for the loopholes of the defense or of the prosecutor, etc. He's going to think how they're going to think. And he's going to prepare his arguments before they even say them to him. Understand? Okay? So he's going to deal with the evidence individually, and then he's also going to deal with the evidence collectively. The prosecutor is going to put his pieces together. He's going to link them together. He's going to lace them together to make a case. All right? Khairan, inshallah. So therefore, did the Prophet tell him to make wudu from the beginning? Wudu. Or did he tell him to make wudu from the last place that he started? So on and so forth. To the end of that argument. And of course, to simplify things in this beginner's level, some scholars say that if you finish your wudu and you see that you have a dry spot, or you realize that you didn't wash that part of your body, then the only thing that you have to do is to finish where you left off as long as the rest of your body is still wet with water. So I did everything from the beginning in my wudu, and then when I finished my wudu, I realized that my left ankle is still dry. I walked out the bathroom or the wudu station. I don't have to start wudu from the beginning. All I have to do is just wash my left foot completely. As long as my right foot is still wet, the top of my hair or my head is still moist. You don't wash the head, you wipe it. My arms, my elbows, my fingertips, etc. are still wet with water. As far as if they begin to dry, then that's a different story. Khairan. All right. Last fa'idah Sanani mentions from this hadith, the extraction from this hadith. The hadith proves is that someone who's ignorant or someone who's unaware, someone who's forgetful, they take the same ruling as the one who did it intentionally. So the ignorant person, I didn't know I had to wash this part of my body, or I forgot, I didn't see it, that I left a dry spot, you have to make wudu again, period. As if you did it intentionally. It doesn't matter. Now you getting a sin from Allah, that's a different story. But the ibadah has to be done correctly. So you who did it by accident, who left it off by accident, he who left it off intentionally, same ruling. Khairan, inshallah ta'ala. So that's the end of Sanani's discussion. And of course, this goes to show, and this goes to teach us that the leader, the scholar, the ruler, the imam, he should be mindful and he should look after his flock. He should keep a close watch on his flock, and he should be concerned for the deen of his flock and the spiritual well-being of his flock. Wallahu ta'ala alam wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala abdi wa rasulihi nabiyina wa imamina Muhammad.